city was alive. Markets rang with voices. Cafes spilled with music and chatter. Clinics opened their doors before sunrise. Workshops stitched hope into fabric. And startups promised to change the future with apps no one had tested yet. 5 people stood at the heart of it all. Tempu, the trader chasing lightning. Joey, the clinic owner, careful and cautious. Berlin, the dreamer with a cafe full of music. Grace, the quiet tailor who saved more than she spent. And Kate with her partner John, building an app with all their hope inside it. Each believed they understood money. Each believed they knew how to win. But storms never ask permission. They simply arrive. And when they arrive, they test what is hidden. Not the bright lights on the surface, but the foundations underneath. The lesson was simple. In business, a storm does not create weakness. It only reveals it. Tempu was quick with numbers. He traded stocks as if the market were a game. One morning, his screen flashed green. He had turned a small bet into a fortune overnight. He laughed out loud, calling himself a genius. He told his younger brother their college future was safe forever. At dinner, he spoke with pride. "Boldness is what makes success," he said. "Fortune always favors the brave. But boldness is not always bravery. Sometimes it is just recklessness wearing a crown." Tempu believed he had skill. But skill takes time. Skill survives across seasons. And what Tempu had was only luck. Luck that shined bright, but burned fast. The city clapped for him. Relatives praised him. Friends envied him. But Tempu was standing on thin ice, mistaking it for solid ground. The lesson was clear. In business, luck is never a strategy. It is only a guest. And guests never stay long. Joey was different from Tempu. Where Tempu rushed, Joey slowed down. Where Tempu gambled, Joey calculated. He owned a small clinic. The walls were old, the equipment outdated. But every month, patients walked through his doors. Mothers with children, elders with fragile steps, workers with tired bodies. Joey dreamed of new machines. He dreamed of expanding to a bigger building. But each time he looked at the numbers, he paused. The money was there, but just enough. If one storm came, the money would vanish. So he chose safety. He kept a reserve, untouched, like a shield in the back room. His friends mocked him. They said he was too cautious. They said boldness builds empires. But Joey knew what they did not. Empires crumble faster than they rise. And when they fall, families fall with them. At night, Joey balanced his books under a single bulb. His children slept in the next room. Their future was his reason for saving. Not ambition, not applause, just peace of mind. Some called him fearful. Others called him boring. But Joey was neither. He was simply prepared. The lesson was clear. In business, growth is exciting, but survival is essential. And survival begins with caution. Berlin was a dreamer. He believed business was more than money. He believed it was culture. It was community. It was beauty. His cafe stood at the corner of a busy street. Every evening it filled with music. Young artists strummed guitars. Poets read verses. Friends laughed over steaming cups of coffee. The place felt alive. It was more than a shop. It was a stage, a heartbeat. Berlin poured every dollar back into the cafe. New chairs, better lights, a stronger sound system. He wanted people to feel wonder when they entered. One night, a banker visited. He sipped coffee, smiled, and leaned closer. "With a little funding," he said, "you could open 3 more cafes like this. Imagine your name across the city." Berlin's eyes lit up. He imagined lines at every corner. He imagined applause, success, and recognition. But applause does not pay rent. And recognition does not replace savings. Berlin did not keep reserves. He had no cushion, no shield, only a dream burning brighter each night. The lesson was clear. In business, dreams inspire, but without safety, dreams are fragile. And fragile dreams break the loudest. Grace was quiet. She ran a small tailoring shop. The machines were old but steady. The room smelled of fabric and dust. Her hands worked late into the night, stitching futures together. Apprentices sat by her side. Young girls from the neighborhood. Girls who wanted more than the street. She taught them to sew, to measure, to craft. To them, Grace was not just a tailor. She was a lifeline, but people mocked her. Relatives called her stingy. They said she had no vision. They laughed at how she saved every coin. No new dresses for herself. No jewelry. No big show of success. Grace did not care. Each night, she locked her savings box. Inside it, not just money but peace of mind. She knew wealth was not the dress on your back. Wealth was the ability to say no. To say no to debt. To say no to desperation. To say no when life demands too much. Her apprentices noticed. One asked, "Why don't you spend more, teacher?" Grace smiled softly. "Because wealth you see disappears. Wealth you don't see stays." The lesson was clear. In business, riches are loud. But true wealth is silent. It is savings. It is freedom. It is the power to endure the storm. Kate and John were partners. Partners in life. Partners in business. They were building an app. An app they believed would change the city. It would connect people, simplify lives, and bring wealth. At least that was the dream. They worked late into the night. Laptop screens glowing. Whiteboards filled with sketches. Empty coffee cups stacked like trophies of exhaustion. Investors came once. They listened. They nodded. And they said, "Maybe, if you can grow faster." So Kate and John pushed harder. They cut back on everything. They skipped dinners. They delayed bills. They promised each other that sacrifice today would mean freedom tomorrow. But sacrifice does not pay rent. And dreams do not keep the lights on. John's parents asked him to slow down. Kate's friends begged her to find something safer. But neither listened. They said, "This is the big break. This is all or nothing." Their love began to strain. Arguments grew sharper. Not about love but about money. Because when money shakes, even love feels unsteady. The truth was simple. Kate and John were not playing the same game as the investors. The investors wanted quick wins. Kate and John needed steady survival. The lesson was clear. In business, chasing someone else's game is the fastest way to lose your own. And when you bet everything, the cost is more than money. It can cost the very people you love. The city had grown comfortable. The markets were busy. The cafes were full. The clinics steady. The workshops humming. The startups chasing dreams. Then the storm came. Not just rain, not just wind, but an economic storm. A recession that cut spending. A flood that broke supply chains. And panic that spread faster than water. Tempu stared at his screen. His trades were sinking. Red numbers filled the charts. He told himself one more risk would save him. But risk only doubled his fall. Joey's clinic shook under pressure. Medicine costs rose. Patients struggled to pay. But Joey reached for his reserve. The shield he had built now kept the doors open. Berlin's cafe grew quiet. No music. No crowds. Empty chairs sat like ghosts in the room. He kept spending to protect the dream. But a dream without income is a fire with no fuel. Grace tightened her belt. She cut hours but kept paying apprentices. Her savings became their lifeline. When neighbors lost hope, her workshop became a refuge. Kate and John faced silence. Investors pulled out. Emails stopped. The app stalled. And at home, love turned into blame. The city that once danced now trembled. One storm had tested them all. Some bent but stood. Others cracked and fell. The lesson was clear. In business, storms are not a question of if, but when. And when they come, your preparation decides your survival. The storm had passed, but the damage remained. Tempu's brother came home with empty eyes. The college fees Tempu promised were gone. The money vanished with his trades. For the first time, Tempu saw his pride break. Joey's clinic was tired. The shelves were thin, but his doors stayed open. His patients still walked in. His caution had bought survival. Berlin stood in his silent cafe. The stage was empty. The chairs were cold. The music was gone. And outside, young artists wept for the space they had lost. A dream without savings had collapsed. Grace's workshop was different. Her apprentices still stitched. Her savings fed them when wages fell short. And neighbors began to see her not as stingy, but as strong. Kate and John sat apart. No investors, no funding, no app, and no peace at home. The silence between them was heavier than the silence in their inbox. The storm had revealed everything. Who stood, who bent, who broke. The lesson was clear. In business, survival is not shared equally. It belongs to those who prepared when no one was watching. The storm had ended, but the city was still wounded. Shops were closed, homes were shaken, dreams were scattered in the streets. Yet in the silence, new bonds began to form.
Enjoying this story? Pause for a moment. Hit the like button and make sure you subscribe. That way, you won't miss the next story. Business lessons like this one.
Berlin walked past Grace's workshop. He heard music again, not from a stage, but from apprentices humming as they worked. He stepped inside, humbled. Grace offered him space. "Let your artists play here," she said. And they did. The workshop became a stage of survival. Joey reached out to Grace. His clinic needed uniforms. Her apprentices could sew them. She agreed, and her workshop became more than fabric. It became community. Kate and John drifted too, broke, tired, and ashamed. But when Berlin saw John wandering, he handed him a broom. "Help me clean the cafe," he said. John agreed. It was not coding, but it was dignity. Slowly, the broken pieces of the city began to fit together. Not in the way they had imagined. Not with wealth or applause, but with humility, with small acts of trust, with alliances no one expected. The lesson was clear. In business, survival is not only about money. It is about people. And when money fails, trust becomes the most valuable currency of all. The city was healing. But healing is never free. Every survivor carried scars. Tempu faced the hardest one. Lenders knocked on his door. Debts he could not pay. Promises he could not keep. For the first time he admitted it, it was not bad luck. It was reckless pride. Joey stood in his clinic. Weary, but standing. His patients trusted him more than ever. Not because he was the fastest, but because he was the one still open. Caution had become his strength. Berlin reopened his cafe. Not bigger, not brighter, but smaller, simpler. No banners, no show, just coffee, music, and survival. Humility had replaced applause. Grace's apprentices spread their wings. One opened her own small shop. Another began teaching others. Grace watched quietly, knowing that true wealth multiplies beyond yourself. Kate and John sat together again. Not coding, not pitching, just talking. They realized the app was never the point. Partnership was the point. Trust was the point. Love was the point. Each character stood in the light of hard truth. Each one changed. Not all the same. Not all in victory, but all in growth. The lesson was clear. In business, the greatest reckoning is not with the market. It is with yourself. Markets only reflect what pride, patience, or humility has already built inside you. The storm was gone, but the city was not the same. Markets reopened. Cafes brewed again. Clinics welcomed patients. Workshops hummed. The sound was softer than before, but steadier. Tempu no longer chased lightning. He worked quietly, repaying debt step by step. His pride was smaller, but his wisdom was larger. Joey's clinic became a pillar, not because it was rich, but because it endured. Families trusted him more than ever. Caution had turned into reputation. Berlin's cafe returned with new life. No stage, no spotlight, just honest coffee and music. What once was applause had become gratitude. Grace's workshop flourished. Her apprentices spread across the city. Each carried her discipline. Each carried her strength. Her savings had created more than wealth. It had created legacy. Kate and John rebuilt too. Not for investors, not for applause, but for themselves. Their new app was smaller, but steadier. Built for people they could see, not investors they could not trust. The city exhaled. It was not the city it once was. It was wiser. It was humbler. It was stronger. The lesson was clear. In business, storms will always come. But wealth is not the car you drive or the cafe lights you hang. Wealth is the ability to endure, to stand after the storm and still choose tomorrow.